welcome back. In 1860, 52 years after Congress made it unlawful to import enslaved people, a smuggler or an old pirate named Timothy Mayer, who was a wealthy Alabama businessman, allegedly made a bet that he could smuggle in a ship of enslaved Africans. So on July 8, 1860, late at night, the ship Clotilda sailed into Mobile Bay in Alabama. On board were 110 enslaved ancestors, men, women, and children between the ages of 5 through 23. The captain of the Clotilda, the pirate of humans, William Foster, wanted to erase the evidence of their crime, so he set the Clotilda on fire and sunk it in the Mobile River. The 110 ancestors were taken from Ouida, or present-day Benin. The enslaved ancestors were bought from a barracoon, or a prison where captives were held before the horrific voyage into chattel slavery. Their exact places of origins varied. Some were abducted Yoruba traders, others came from the mountainous Antakora region, and still others were Nupe and Dende. The largest group was comprised of Yorubas of the Isha subgroup and were captured on the same day in a dawn raid led by Gehazo, the king of the Dahomey. In Alabama, the 110 were divided as follows. 25 were sold to slave brokers who took them away from Mobile. 32 became the property of Timothy Mayer, the man who sponsored the human piracy. 8 became the possession of his brother James Mayer. 20 were sent to Burns Mayer Plantation in Clark County. And the captain, Pirate Foster, was compensated by being given 5 to 8 human beings. They were all subjected to cruel, unpaid labor. But fortunately for these ancestors, they arrived near the end of slavery. So 5 years later, in 1865, after the Civil War, they were freed. Of course, they wanted to return to their homes in West Africa, but they had no money and were not given reparations. So a year later, in 1866, they decided to establish a settlement in an area called Plateau in Mobile, Alabama. They called it Africantown. It was the first town established by, continuously occupied, and governed by black people in the U.S. The men worked in the shipyards and mills, and the women sold vegetables in Mobile. They saved and purchased the land for the settlement. The original Africantown had 2 sections, a large one of 50 acres and a smaller 2-acre section for one of the founders, Charlie Lewis, or Luaeli, his Yoruba name. Their last attempt to return to Africa was in 1870, when they sought the assistance of the American Colonization Society, but their request was denied. They retained much of their West African culture. They appointed a chief who was a relative of King Gehazi, the same man who stole them. His name was Gumpa, or African Peter. Their legal system was administered by 2 judges, Jabba Shade, a herbal healer, and Osa Kibe. They built the first school in the area, and the teacher was an African American. Though from the beginning, some of them intermarried with African Americans, the relationship between both groups was always strained. The Africans claimed they were shunned and ridiculed by the African Americans. However, the Africans were a closely knit community that rebelled against anyone, regardless of race, who tried to disparage them. They were excellent at passing down their culture generationally, so their language, names, and habits were sustained long into the 20th century. Currently, their descendants now number in the thousands, and still uphold their cultural pride. In April 2018, the Clotilda wreck was found. July 8, 2023, 257 years after the Clotilda arrived in the U.S., the Africantown Heritage House Museum was established. Yeah, key takeaways. At the right time, the truth comes to light. You can see it. They had to find that shipwreck at the right time where it would mean something to us. Second, the whole truth is more complicated than we think. So choose your personal character well. As you can see, this whole thing is messy. We see how people were being treated and sold in Africa. We see these men stealing them. We see African Americans and the Africans not getting along. We see a messy world. And we know we can choose who to be in the mess. Third, and most important to me, is look at those beautiful ancestors and their descendants trying to thrive while Black. So thank you for listening.